Hey folks, welcome back to our pranayama practice. We're into week 5 of our winter 2022 pranayama practice. I hope you've been enjoying the lessons so far. And today we're going to keep building upon our Langana practice. So remember, the Langana practice is orientated around calming the system down, relaxing the system down, producing energy, prana or chi, engaging the parasympathetic nervous system, decreasing your stress response, if you will, engaging your parasympathetic nervous system response. So basically, it's just designed to relax you, calm you. And because we're doing a lot of nostril breathing with our mouth closed, we're building up our carbon dioxide and oxygenation ratio, we're balancing it out. That facilitates energy production in the cell. So you build up your chi as well, so you get energized. Okay, so the longer you practice, the more that happens, the more chi and energy and prana you build up. Okay, so you can use this practice to either just relax, calm your mind, calm your body, or to build up energy and to build focus and concentration. So just all those 4 things, right? Energy, focus, concentration, calmness, relaxation, like really, really important skills to practice and be able to use in your everyday life. And that's really, really cool, right? Because if you are in a stressful position, okay, or a stressful environment, once you're outside the initial stress, okay, the body can still feel like it's still under stress, right? And so it's still releasing the chemicals and the hormones and the neurotransmitters that are telling the body to prepare for work or to prepare for action. Okay, so that's the stress response. But when we do pranayama and we do a Langana practice, we basically telling the body, okay, that stress is now gone. It's now time to come back to baseline, back to homeostasis, back to balance. And then let's say we even go just a little bit further and then relax the state. Okay. So we call this kind of neuroregulation. So the ability, or self-regulation. So the ability to self-regulate your body and your system. So in the periods of high stress or high anxiety, come back to baseline and to facilitate a rest, relaxation response. That's what it's all about. Okay. So how do we do that? We want to build up into the core of the Langana is the exhale is always longer than the inhale, right? That's the basic kind of principle of a Langana breath. So it doesn't really matter how long your inhale is or how long your exhale is. Long as the exhale is longer than inhale, you're going to be good to go. Now, building on that, we do know from a lot of research that if you can slow your respiratory ratio down to 5.2 breaths per minute, so basically 5 breaths per minute, that is going to engage the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay. All right. How many minutes you need that for? I haven't really kind of come across the studies yet to show exactly the protocol for how long, but there's a sweet spot between 5 and 20 minutes. All right. So between 5 and 20 minutes to kind of create that shift. The more you practice, the more you're better at it, the more your body will be able to shift back into those states more readily. So we can definitely make that shift. We can make that change. Once we've got that change, we sustain the change. And then we can layer on top other kind of practice we want to do. We want to build up energy, build up concentration, develop a specific emotional or mental state. Okay, so you can layer on top of that and even then prepare to do meditation. So once we've got that state happening, okay, then the techniques is we're always nostril breathing. So we're inhaling, exhaling through the nose. That regulates the blood gas exchange, releases nitric oxide in the system. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator in not only in the lungs, but in the vessels, so in the arteries. So vasodilation means it opens up, so you've got more flow. So it's from restricted to open, restricted. So you can get medication, vasodilators, to open up the blood vessels to make more flow of blood around the system, or you can do nostril breathing. Okay. So potentially you can make a potential argument or a case for, instead of going on particular medications, or if you want to get off particular medications, you could practice pranayama, nostril breathing, and you can create the vasodilation effect. Now, depending on what's causing the hypertension as well. So, you know, there's a whole other thing we need to talk about there. But today, going back to the same time. So nostril breathing, and that regulates the CO2 gas exchange and oxygen exchange, which oxygenates the tissues. And then we want to slowly start to train ourselves to extend the exhale, extend the exhale, extend the exhale. So our primary goal is first to get to 5 breaths per minute, which sounds like a lot because the average bear is walking around breathing at between 16 and 20 breaths per minute, right? And if they're open mouth breathing a lot, you're outgassing a lot of carbon dioxide. The problem with that is when you outgas a lot of carbon dioxide, that drops the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve, which is basically the signal for where carbon dioxide kicks the blood cells, oxygen off the blood cells, and then they can be drawn into the cell for energy production in the cell in the Krebs cycle and electron transport chain. Okay, but if you're outgassing too much carbon dioxide, you're going to interfere with that kind of blood gas ratio in the bloodstream, and so you're not going to get that signal to the red blood cell to release the oxygen molecule. So you can have high levels of blood oxygen levels, so SpO2. It can be high, like in 98, 99, but you're not getting the oxygen into the cell. All right, so that's the key thing. The way we do that is to slow down that exhale. So we just slow down the release of carbon dioxide. Okay. Now you don't want to go too far the other way where you build up too much carbon dioxide by like lots of strong breath holds and these kind of things, because the alveoli are really sensitive. Okay, so alveoli is like the little air sacs. Okay, and just think of a balloon. You can blow a balloon up and you can pop a balloon with too much air pressure. So if you're holding up and you're getting too much pressure, too much build up in the system, that can create some structural problems, some structural potential even injury to the tissue. So we don't want to do that. So it's a slow, gentle, progressive build up over time. Okay. And you're always just checking in with your breath hunger. So that's that urge to breathe. Now that's where the CO2 thing comes into it as well, because it's the level of carbon dioxide in the blood, which is kind of like registered by the baroreceptors in the aorta and in the carotid arteries. So there's receptors or sensors in the actual arteries that are measuring carbon dioxide levels in the blood and then feeding back to the brainstem, into the medulla, and to the respiratory dorsal sections in the brainstem, which regulate respiration and breathing. So they're going to tell the brain when to inhale and to exhale to maintain this fine balance between oxygen and carbon dioxide. So it's always about maintaining a balance. Okay, it's not like we want more or less, it's just finding the balance. So there's still a lot of discussion around or research going on to whether you can actually change those set points, those sensors in the medulla and in the carotid arteries. Unsure at the moment, but what we can do is if you're over breathing, we can kind of return you back to whatever your baseline is. And so you will find your natural breathing ratio and your natural breath cycle. Okay, so that's really important. You want to come back to your own baseline first. And then once you've kind of established what your ratio is, then you can use that for your baseline. So my breathing ratio is going to be different to yours. So for example, what I mean by breathing ratio is on the inhale, on the inhale, retention, exhale, suspension. So there's 4 parts of a breathing cycle. And the ratio is how many seconds on the inhale, how many seconds on the retention or breath hold, how many seconds on the exhale, how many seconds on the suspension or breath hold. Okay, so those ratios, you could have an even ratio, for example, would be 5 inhale, 5 hold, 5 exhale, 5 suspend. Okay, a longer ratio would look something like 5 inhale, 5 hold, 10 exhale, 5 hold. All right, a summoner ratio, which is in balancing or even, would be the same as just a balancing ratio of 5, 5, 5, and 5. And a Brahmana ratio, which is a stimulating, which is opposite of Longana, is the inhale is still equal to the exhale, okay, but the intention is more of a stronger inhale through the nose and a longer hold, and then the exhale is still equal to the inhale, or it can be still longer, okay, but you don't want to make the exhale shorter than the inhale, because then you're going to build up that gas pressure. All right, you're breathing in more air than you're outgassing, and so that's going to increase the pressure in the thorax and in the lung tissue. So the ratio, that's the ratio. So the ratio that you build up is really individual to you. In a classical pranayama technique, we take a lot of time, a lot of patience to build up a pranayama practice which is suitable to the individual person. Okay, so it's not, pranayama is not really suitable for group practice unless all the people who are doing a practice are really quite familiar with the practice themselves and they know how to adjust to their own, because you can do it, but you kind of need to know the rules first, kind of like the Pablo Picasso technique. You need to know the rules first before you can then start to break the rules or adjust the rules accordingly. So Pablo Picasso is really well known for his abstract painting, right? Amazing abstract painter. But before he was really well known for his abstract painting, he was a really, really, really good life drawer. He could draw almost photorealistic life figures. So have you ever done any visual arts? You studied visual arts like I did in the past life. Life drawing is a real skill, and you learn how to, look at an object and kind of like see the actual object for what it is. All right. So there's a lot of detail there. So Pablo Picasso is really, really detailed illustrator, really well. But then once he learned all those rules of illustration, he was able to then translate that into his abstract art and break all the rules. But when you look at the painting, you still say, oh, it's a human, that's a human. But he was able to manipulate the rules because he understood them. Right. So this is principle-based practice. Once you understand the principles, then you can kind of adjust accordingly to your goal. So that's really, really important. We want to adjust the ratios to you. So for example, my ratio when I'm doing my personal practice is 2 breaths per minute. So I'll do my warm-up practice, and then I'll move into my deeper practice where I'm inhaling, suspending, exhaling, retaining, suspending at the bottom, sorry. Okay. And that is the 30-second cycle. All right. And do that twice a minute and do that for 20 minutes. Okay. All right. Whereas a beginner might start off on a 3x3 practice. It doesn't matter what the ratio is, as long as it's suitable for you, which is really important. Okay. So we're going to continue building on our lung practice. We do our first round, which is the warm-up breathing. Second round, we do triangle breathing. Third round, we do a box breathing pattern. Okay. And we progressively increase the skill and the technique of breathing using the valving techniques. So there are 4 valving techniques. Okay. So we slowly develop the valving techniques. We develop our counting technique. We develop our concentration, our focus, and together of all that, we build up our pranayama practice and our skill. So let's get started, shall we? Get yourself into a nice, comfortable position. Okay, sitting down. So you can be sitting cross-legged. Any version of cross-legged, the lotus positions that works for you is fine. You could be kneeling in a kneeling position on like a little Zen bench, or you could be even sitting in a chair. Doesn't matter, long as you've got a tall spine. Okay, and this is important so the diaphragm can move up and down correctly. Right. So from here,